Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. All my video lectures are mainly for educative purpose. Today's lecture will be very helpful to fourth year student, even third year for their oral exams, theory. This can be asked as a full question and very frequently you will come across in your everyday practice. Today we are going to discuss regarding what we call as how you approach to a person with syncope. Now there is a vague term we call dizziness. Dizziness is a term where person can describe you in a many different ways. Fainting episodes, person is not feeling well, something is happening in the skull region, person is getting vertigo, or person is feeling dizzy, etc. Of this, you will have to differentiate vertigo, syncope, pre-syncope, and which does not belong to vertigo, pre-syncope or syncope. You will have to differentiate this, and also you will have to differentiate other condition which can mimic identical like syncope, like epilepsy, pseudo-seizures, etc. So before defining a syncope, there is one word we call as the difference between a syncope and sudden death is one who wakes up is syncope and one who does not wake up is we call sudden death. So person gets a fall, he doesn't get up, he goes to sudden death. And person who gets a fall, he becomes unconscious and he wakes up on his own. We call that as a syncope. Now we'll be going in detail. As routine, we'll be discussing under all these headings. Syncope is basically a symptom. It is not a disease. It is not a diagnosis. So what are the characteristics of this symptom? It is sudden or we call abrupt. Person gets a transient loss of consciousness. And because of this, the person has got loss of postural tone. He just gets a fall. And it is for a very short duration. By and large, it is for few seconds to maximum minutes. And there is a spontaneous recovery, but this recovery is a complete recovery, full recovery. So they describe abrupt, transient loss of consciousness, loss of postural tone, rapid recovery and full recovery. And this is because of hypoperfusion of a brain. So there is decreased blood supply to brain leading to sudden onset of transient loss of consciousness. Person gets a fall. It is lasting for a very short duration and person gets a spontaneous recovery and it is a full recovery without any other neurological damage. So if all these criteria are fulfilled, you label that as syncope. Now in a syncope, you can have a prodrome. In this prodrome, you can have a lightheadedness, little nausea feeling, diaphoresis, and some person can have a visual disturbances. So these are the common symptoms. And this can precede the loss of consciousness for several seconds to several minutes. In a pre-syncope, person do not get loss of consciousness. There is only prodrome. Then we call that as a pre-syncope. Means prodrome is present, but person does not lose consciousness. We'll call that as a pre-syncope. While if there is a prodrome followed by a loss of consciousness for few seconds to several minutes, we call that as a syncope. So prodrome may last for seconds to several minutes and followed by a loss of consciousness which is also lasting for few seconds to a minute. So pre-syncope is a situation in which syncope prodrome will occur, but it is not followed by loss of consciousness. So this is very, very important. So pre-syncope is indirectly prodrome, but if there is a prodrome with loss of consciousness, it becomes syncope. There is no loss of consciousness, pre-syncope. Recovery is immediate and by and large complete, but in a post-syncope, person may have a brief period of confusion. We already mentioned it is preceded by a symptom we call as a prodrome, and in a post-syncope period, person can have a confusion because of injury, because of fall, he can have injury, he can have bruise, hematoma, etc. And some person who does not recover the consciousness may die. We call sudden death. And this is very, very common with cardiovascular etiology of syncope. There is one another term which is being utilized in a syncope. It is called orthostatic syncope. Means in orthostatic hypotension is diagnosed when either of the following occurs within 2 to 5 minutes of moving from supine posture to standing posture. That is, if the person from supine posture goes to the standing posture, and if there is a fall of blood pressure, systolic blood pressure more than 20, diastolic pressure falls by more than 10 millimeter of mercury, we label that as orthostatic hypotension. And during this period, if he gets a syncopal episode, it is labeled as orthostatic syncope. Syncope is important because it is quite common, and to investigate a syncope, there's a lot of investigations to confirm the diagnosis. Still, in spite of all costly investigation also, you may not come to the accurate diagnosis, then we label that as an idiopathic etiology. So it is costly, and if a person gets a fall, he gets an injury, it can produce a damage to some of the organs, so maybe disabling, and because of syncopal episode, person may be away from the work, etc. Good number of disorders are preceded by syncope, and they may end with sudden cardiac death. So it may be the warning sign before sudden cardiac death. Hence, you should pay attention to syncope and try to investigate properly and come to the nearmost diagnosis, and you can give a proper treatment. If you see the frequency of a syncope in children before the age of 18, almost 15% incidence. During 10 years of period in the men aged from 40 to 60, almost 16%. Women between 40 to 50, 19%. Above 70 years, almost 23%. And the person who gets a syncope, the recurrence chance in 3 years is almost 35%. So it is quite serious. Now, before we understand the syncope in detail, there is something called as a temporary loss of consciousness. Yes, in syncope also there is a temporary loss of consciousness, but person recovers completely, and it has to be due to lack of blood supply to brain or because of hypoperfusion of the brain. Now, if a person gets a little trauma, head injury. And secondary to head injury, temporary there is a loss of consciousness. It is labeled as concussion. So temporary, the neuron stops working, and that we call as a concussion. And during that period, person is unconscious. And there is a definite history of a head trauma. But without head trauma, if a person gets temporary loss of consciousness, we call it a non-traumatic temporary loss of consciousness. And in that, syncope is one, epileptic seizure is second variety, psychogenic is third variety, and fourth, we put them together into one group we call as rare group. So these are the group. If we go in little more detail, syncope can be because of reflex syncope, or we call as a vasovagal syncope, or we call as a neurocardiogenic syncope. Second group can be orthostatic hypotension. And cardiac group we can divide into arrhythmias and structural heart disease, etc. We'll be going in detail in further slides. Epileptic seizure can also have a temporary loss of consciousness, which can be generalized. Generalized can be partial and simple, etc. You can divide epileptic seizure, but in that generalized and focal. In generalized, usually person will have a temporary loss of consciousness, while in a focal seizure, person is usually conscious. But when the focal seizure becomes complex partial, or it goes into secondary generalized, again person will have a temporary loss of consciousness. This will be discussing separately in a chapter of epilepsy. Psychogenic is also described as psychogenic pseudosyncope, also labeled as PPS, P for psychogenic, P for pseudo, and S for syncope. Also some people label as psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. So P for psychogenic, N for E for epileptic, and S for seizures. You can utilize any one of this. Here you have got a seizure types of manifestation, but it is psychogenic, and here the person mimics like syncope, but it is labeled as pseudosyncope, or some people label also as a psychogenic pseudosyncope. So it is very important. And there are other groups where person develops a symptom signs like a syncope. Example, subclavian steal syndrome, where there is a lack of blood supply to the brainstem because of a partial occlusion of the subclavian artery. You can have a vertebrobasilar TIA, which can also have symptoms suggestive like a TIA, and that mimics like syncope. Once in a while, in a case of a subarachnoid hemorrhage also, and in children particularly, cyanotic breath holding spells can also mimic identical like syncope. So these are some odd groups. Remember these four conditions: subclavian steal syndrome, vertebrobasilar artery TIA, subarachnoid hemorrhage, cyanotic spells, particularly breath holding spell in children. There is another term also utilized as a TET spell or cyanotic spell in a tetralogy of Fallot. It is different from cyanotic breath holding spell, which is very common in a children. So do remember this. So transient loss of consciousness, it can be traumatic, non-traumatic, and we also say that the person will have a, ideally no loss of consciousness, but it mimics, and in that you will put pseudosyncope. We have already mentioned this pseudosyncope, or we call psychogenic pseudosyncope, and psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. These two will come here. Plus, there is one more group which is in a psychiatric group we call cataplexy, and there is another we call as a drop attacks. Here we have already given you all together. We have mentioned here 1, 2 will come into these groups: syncope, seizures. Also TIA, strokes will be non-traumatic, where you can have a transient loss of consciousness. By and large in TIA we don't come across transient loss of consciousness. So now if we go through the different syncope in detail, we divide into different groups: reflex syncope, cardiogenic syncope, orthostatic syncope or orthostatic hypotension. A person will have a syncope which will be identical like syncope, but they are not ideally a syncope. We call it the seizures. Vertebrobasilar artery TIA, subclavian steal syndromes, as well as alcohol blackouts, sedatives, psychogenic pseudosyncope, psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, severe hypoxia, even hypoglycemia will be in this group. And this is a very simplified group. So we'll try to utilize this. We have got other slides also. This reflex syncope is also called as a neurocardiogenic syncope. It is also described as an autonomic syncope and also described as a neurally mediated syncope. So these are all the different terms which can be utilized for reflex syncope, which we divide into different groups like vasovagal syncope, situational syncope, and carotid sinus hypersensitivity. So it is divided into 3 groups. So here basically it is neurogenic, which will result into cardiac stimulation, and that will end up into syncope. That's why it is also called as a neurocardiogenic syncope. Vasovagal syncope is very frequently because of prolonged standing, emotional stress like anxiety, or because of fear while drawing up blood for laboratory investigation or blood donation, or when a person gets a severe pain. In all this condition, person can get a vasovagal attacks or vasovagal episode, and person can go into syncope. There is one another condition called as a situational syncope, where you get a syncope during coughing, sneezing, micturition, defecation, post-exercise, while playing a trumpet, etc. And carotid sinus hypersensitivity is whenever there is a pressure over the carotid sinus, person develops a severe bradycardia and can develop a syncope. So we call reflex syncope secondary due to hypersensitive carotid sinus. In cardiogenic, it is divided into 2 groups. We call tachyarrhythmias, bradyarrhythmias, so put together as arrhythmias group. And second we call as a structural heart disease or mechanical conditions. As far as bradyarrhythmia is concerned, mainly sinus arrest and sinus pause. In case of a complete heart block, person can develop a syncope. Less likely in a case of a first degree and second degree AV block. Less likely in case of a sinus bradycardia. But still, some person, if they develop a severe sinus bradycardia, may develop a syncopal episode. As far as tachyarrhythmia is concerned, mainly in case of a ventricular tachycardia, person can develop cardiogenic syncope. More common with mechanical because of a severe obstruction, the cardiac output is markedly reduced. Classical example of that is tight aortic stenosis, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or we call HOCM, massive pulmonary embolism. So this group will be in a cardiogenic syncope. While in orthostatic syncope, person because of the following condition, whenever he stands up, they develop the fall of blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure more than 20, diastolic blood pressure more than 10. We call that as orthostatic hypotension. But if that fall is more, person can develop a syncopal episode, and that we call as an orthostatic syncope. Now this particular condition is very frequently when there is a volume depletion. Classical example like severe dehydration, and it is more common in an old person. who are on a diuretic therapy, who are mentally retarded because they don't take adequate quantity of fluid, etc. Or person who are deprived of water, bedridden, or they develop a severe hyperpyrexia. All those people are more prone to develop a orthostatic syncope. As far as drug is concerned, alpha blocker, which are very frequently utilized in BPH, certain antidepressant and antipsychotic drug can also produce a orthostatic hypotension and orthostatic syncope. As far as autonomic failure is concerned, Parkinson, diabetes mellitus, alcohol, or we call alcoholism, amyloidosis, and multiple system atrophy groups. Of that, Parkinsonism, diabetes comes topmost on the list. We already mentioned regarding a syncope mimics, that is seizures, cerebrovascular syncope, that is vertebrobasilar artery, TIA, subclavian still syndrome. In case of alcohol blackouts, sedatives, psychogenic pseudosyncope, and psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. All this plus even hypoxia and severe hypoglycemia can mimic syncope mimics. Now only I am mentioning the percentage. Almost 50% of the time it is because of neurally mediated, or we call reflex syncope, or we call neurocardiogenic syncope. Almost it is accounting for nearly 50%. So that is most common. As far as the cardiogenic syncope is concerned, it is accounting for 20%. Orthostatic hypotension is accounting for nearly 30%. One additional cause you can put in orthostatic hypotension is endocrine disorders like Addison's disease, where the person is having hypotension. So we should remember that. And as far as the structural heart disease are concerned, that is aortic stenosis, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, cardiac tamponade, it is almost accounting for 3%. While what we call is a miscellaneous group, where it is mimicking, that will account for 12% of the group, which we call as a psychogenic pseudosyncope or psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, severe hypoxia, hyperventilation. In children, we also labeled as a breath holding spells, cyanotic spells, etc. After all these things, still in a person, you will come across a group where, in spite of a good investigations, almost majority of the investigations are done, still you don't come to the diagnosis. We labeled as unknown etiology, or we call idiopathic, which is accounting for almost 34%, almost 1/3 of the groups. Good number of time you come across that group. So neurally mediated divide into vasovagal or neurocardiogenic, situational, carotid hypersensitivity, and also some people put post-exertional syncope. There is one more word which is being utilized in this group, is rock concert syncope. So when there is a concert, some people develop that is called rock concert syncope, and there is a definite one group which we call as a post-exertional syncope. So we should keep it in mind. Orthostatic, we already divided that because of the fall of blood pressure, person can develop a postural hypotension. There is also one condition we call as a postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which you should remember, it is not orthostatic hypotension. The blood pressure is maintained, but the person develops tachycardia during orthostatic posture. In cardiac groups, arrhythmia, structural heart disease, massive pulmonary embolism, cardiac tamponade, aortic dissection, proximal subclavian disease, it is included in cardiac syncope. As far as CNS concerned, CNS condition, this will come in a pseudo conditions, that is seizures, carotid artery disease, that is we call as vertebrobasilar artery, TIA, or insufficiency, certain brain tumors, severe peripheral neuropathy, etc. Alcohol, certain drugs, hypoglycemia, hypoxia, certain GI causes, and psychogenic pseudosyncope. You can divide whichever way. I consider this slide is the best way to remember. So try to utilize this slide whichever way you follow. This is in further detail regarding neuromediated syncopes, neurally mediated syncope or reflex syncope, vasovagal, situational, there are a lot of cough, sneeze, swallowing reflex, defecation, visceral pain, post-maturation, post-exercise, postprandial, laughing, then playing some instruments, weightlifting, etc. These are all situational syncope. Even deglutition, diving, trumpet playing, and another variety of a neurally mediated or a reflex syncope or neurocardiogenic syncope is carotid sinus hypersensitivity, and absolutely rare you can call atypical form without apparent triggers is called atypical presentation. These are all put into that group. So you can have a vasovagal syncope, situational syncope, and carotid hypersensitivity. Usually in this you will have a precipitating factors like decreased sleep, water deprivation, decreased food intake, decreased blood volume, and even sometimes viral infections, emotional stress, prolonged standing, blood withdrawal, etc. And is triggered by, these are triggering factors, prolonged standing, emotional stress, sudden change in posture, etc. Will be, means indirectly you will always come across a person who has got a predisposing factor and there will be some triggering factors. So try to remember that. In cardiogenic syncope, some people puts into bradyarrhythmia, tachyarrhythmia, structural heart disease, and miscellaneous group. And in miscellaneous group, they put massive pulmonary embolism. And there are some of the ECG which you should keep it in mind. If you diagnose from ECG or by cardiovascular system examination, echo, X-ray, etc. Hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, acute coronary syndrome, pulmonary embolism, prolonged QT, WPW syndrome, Brugada, etc. will predispose to tachyarrhythmias. So do keep it in mind. And also we should not forget there is one more condition we call sixth sinus syndrome, can also end up with sometime cardiogenic syncope. So this will be all big groups, that is sinus node dysfunction, particularly sixth sinus syndrome, AV dysfunction, that is first degree, second degree, complete heart block, supraventricular tachycardia not very common, ventricular tachycardia quite common, inherited channelopathy like what we call as the Brugada syndromes, then right ventricular dysplasia, AVRD, ARVD, etc. Then severe valvular heart disease like aortic stenosis, then hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, acute coronary syndromes, atrial myxoma, cardiac tamponade, all these conditions. And they come in a cardiogenic. Orthostatic, we already mentioned, volume depletion, Parkinson, diabetes, alcohol, drugs like particularly alpha blockers, arkamine, diuretics, antidepressants, antipsychotics. There is a big list. I am skipping over this particular slide. Always remember there is a parallel condition which is nowadays very commonly seen, particularly following the COVID infection. We call it a postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So once in a while you will come across, this is good number of time mistaken for postural hypotension. So you should differentiate this. Non-cardiac group will be neurogenic, metabolic, and psychogenic. So It is almost accounting for 40 to 50% of all syncope, and 40 to 50% are accounting for what we call as a neurocardiogenic syncope, or we call as a reflex syncope. So it is a big group, and this big group is very frequently vascular, we call as subclavian steal syndrome, vertebrobasilar artery insufficiency, or we call TIAs. In neurological conditions, it can be secondary due to what we call as TIAs groups, but by and large the person does not become unconscious. Among metabolic, severe hypoxia, hypoglycemia, alcohol, sedatives, etc. And in a psychogenic, we have got two, that is psychogenic pseudosyncope, we call as a PPS, and psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, we call as a PNES. Psychogenic non-epileptic syndrome or syncope. So these are all those. There are other which also mimics like syncope, like falls, which are very common in old age because of multiple other conditions. Drop attacks, cataplexy, we have already mentioned psychogenic pseudosyncope, TIAs, and psychogenic non-epileptic syncopes or non-epileptic seizures. Metabolic disorders, like already we have told you, this is with loss of consciousness, this is without loss of consciousness. In metabolic, severe hypoxia, hypoglycemia. Psychogenic non-epileptic seizures will be by and large in this group. Epilepsy will be another differential diagnosis. Certain intoxication, particularly alcohol, and vertebrobasilar TIAs, all this. So it is a big list. So we have already mentioned these two will be cerebrovascular syncope, seizures, alcohol intoxication, cataplexy, and psychogenic pseudosyncope. These are all the conditions which are mimicking. So I'm not going, we have already mentioned good number of conditions from this. So at your leisure time you can go through. This is psychogenic pseudosyncope, or we call hysterical syncope. Try to go through in detail at your leisure time. Now at least I'll highlight, because this is good number of time you will come across in your everyday practice. The duration of this particular syncope will be longer lasting. Person will remain immobile on the floor for a very long period, almost say 15 to 30 minutes. Usually eye are open or they blink the eye. Frequency is very high, and that will occur very frequently in presence of the relatives. There are no recognized triggering factor, no sweating, no pallor, there is no nausea, and good number of time there is no injury at all. In case of a psychogenic non-epileptic syncope or seizures, or pseudosyncope, or we label that as a psychogenic pseudosyncope. So do try to identify this particular group. Now if you see in this list, see almost 1/3 of the group is idiopathic. The very big group, another big group is vasovagal. Then cardiogenic is almost 9.5%. Drugs closer to 7%. Orthostatic is almost close to cardiogenic, that is close to 10%. And see the TIA, it is 4%. So these two are the big groups. Then comes cardiogenic and orthostatic. So always we try to rule out reflex syncope or vasovagal syncope. Here it is mentioned 21, but it is almost accounting for 50% of the group. I'll skip this. This is again mentioned You can divide depending upon the etiology, that is reflex syncope, orthostatic and cardiogenic, and depending upon the mechanism, bradycardia, tachycardia and hypotension. Pathophysiology, I'm not going into detail, but I'll be just brushing up in all the conditions. What is happening in an erect posture? Whenever a person acquires an erect posture, the venous return from the lower limb and abdomen is reduced. It reduces the preload. It reduces the cardiac output because the venous return is less. So return to the right side is less. So cardiac output from the left ventricle will be also reduced. There will be fall of blood pressure. Within few seconds, you will get a stimulation of a baroreceptor which are present in carotid sinus as well as aorta that will stimulate what we call as brain centers via vagus nerve, and there will be increased sympathetic activity leading to tachycardia, vasoconstriction and elevation of blood pressure, and at the same time it will inhibit a parasympathetic output. This will be a classical phenomena where you're going to increase force of contraction, inotropic effect, tachycardia, peripheral vasoconstriction, and there is an elevation of blood pressure. This is normal. Now in a reflex syncope, there is depressed vasoreceptors and there is an inhibition of a cardiac response, and this particularly will give rise to more of parasympathetic response rather than sympathetic response, which will give rise to severe bradycardia, and person will have a lack of blood supply to brain and syncope. In a cardiogenic syncope, in severe bradycardia, there will be decreased blood supply to brain. Also in a severe tachycardia, there will be decreased cardiac output and decreased blood supply because of a Starling's phenomena. And in case of a structural heart disease, because of a obstruction at the level of aortic valve, like in a case of a severe tight aortic stenosis, in case of a hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, there is a decreased cardiac output, so decreased blood supply to brain. Also in case of a left atrial myxoma or a ball valve thrombus or a massive pulmonary embolism, there is a decreased cardiac output because there is decreased return to LV, and that will also produce what we call as a severe fall in a cardiac output and results into decreased blood supply. Now in a case of what we call as a volume depletion, particularly in orthostatic hypotension, because of decreased volume, there is a decreased cardiac output resulting into syncope. So these are all the groups. So in a reflex syncope, in cardiac syncope, as well as a postural hypotension, you will have a decreased output. And in this particular variety, that is what we call as a orthostatic hypotension, there is a peripheral resistance is reduced because of a peripheral vasodilatation, because of autonomic failure or damage to autonomic failure, like primary or secondary, and also because of drugs like alpha blockers or certain other drugs which can produce drug induced autonomic failure. You will have a peripheral vasodilatation, and also in case of a reflex syncope, there is a depressed vasoreceptors, and that will also produce inappropriate reflex, and that will lead to peripheral vasodilatation and decrease peripheral vasodilatation, peripheral pooling, hypoperfusion, and lead to syncope. In general, this one single slide explains you everything. Now I got lot of slides which will explain you neurocardiogenic syncope. You can go through this is in detail what is happening, what are the triggering factor. As this is the most common cause of syncope, I am going in little more detail. So there are certain triggers like emotional stress, prolonged standing, dehydration, warm environment. Because of warm environment, you require a lot of sweating, so there is a peripheral vasodilatation, severe pain, prolonged fasting, crowded environment like concern, etc. So hot environment, prolonged standing, emotional stress, dehydration, etc. What they will lead to? They lead to carotid sinus baroreceptor stimulus, stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. There will be hyperdynamic contraction of the heart. This hyperdynamic contraction of the heart will give rise to myocardial mechanoreceptor stimulation, which will paradoxically stimulate the vagal reflex, and this vagal reflex will give rise to peripheral vasodilatation, we call it a vasodepressor response, and there will be reflex bradycardia. And because of both of this, there will be decreased cardiac output, decreased blood supply to brain, and that will produce a syncope. And also, because of a severe dehydration, there is a reduced LV cavity size because of reduced blood volume, decreased cardiac output. Now that will stimulate the carotid sinus baroreceptor, and again this chain will continue. And this reflex is also called as a Basalt-Jarrett's reflex. So there is a strong myocardial contraction on an empty heart will give rise to this reflex, paradoxical vagal reflex. That is the reason for neurocardiogenic syncope. At your leisure time, you can go through. So this is a classical Basalt-Jarrett's reflex. So receptor in the ventricular wall, which are mechanical sensitive receptor, and there are chemosensitive receptors. They will stimulate vagus nerve. Vasomotor center will be inhibited and resulting into bradycardia, hypotension, peripheral vasodilatation. And there will be cardio-inhibitory reflex, and this is through a vagus, so it is called vagally mediated. Hence this is also called as vasovagal syncope. Same thing is explained. There are multiple slides, so I'll just skip it for a few seconds. At your leisure time, you can go through. You can go through. This is neurally mediated. Again here it is explained. These are all the different mechanisms. This is neurally mediated syncopal syndromes. These are afferent pathway. These are efferent pathway. In that single slide I have already explained. These are all the different factors. All the different factors which will be acting on the brain, and then that will be acting on the heart. That's why it is called neurocardiogenic syncope. Good slides, different ways of explaining. At your leisure time you can go through. This is another same. These are all the different types of stimulus. These are afferent pathway. So these are neural stimulus affecting on a cardiovascular system via neural. That's why neurocardiogenic syncope. At your leisure time, go through. Again, same thing explained. Decreased venous return, LV contraction, mechanical receptor stimulation, inhibition of sympathetic tone, vagal stimulation, bradycardia, and gives rise to syncope. Here, inhibition of sympathetic tone, vasodilatation, hypotension, and syncope. So, vasodilatation, vasodepressor response, vasodilatation with bradycardia, we call cardio-inhibitory response, and there is a syncope. Now in a syncope there are few things which we will be going through as far as clinical feature is concerned. We always say prodromal phase, syncope and post-syncope. We already mentioned this. We have explained this. Syncope is a symptom. We have explained that particular part. So, in a prodromal phase, either you can have any one of this group of symptoms. There is a big list. Very frequently following exercise, long standing, hot weather, lightheaded, seeing blackouts, seeing stars, nausea, abdominal cramps. Some person will say that there was a racing of the heart, rapid standing from sitting down, person had taken no breakfast, after seeing a blood withdrawal or person has undergone a laboratory testing, micturition, turning head rapidly, emotional outburst, and some person will also say that he doesn't remember what has happened. All this can be there, and during that particular episode person can have a brief convulsions if there is a severe lack of blood supply to brain, and when he recovers he can have a short period of confusion. So we divide into three stages: pre-syncope, syncope and post-syncope. Usually in this pre-syncope we use the word prodrome, then person develops a classical syncope, and during a post-syncope the symptoms will be there which we call as the post-syncopal symptoms. So commonly in a prodrome, but before the prodrome there will be some person will be able to explain you some precipitating event like stress, trauma, pain, sight of blood, prolonged standing, heat exposure, pain, withdrawal of blood, etc. During prodrome, person will have a diaphoresis, little amount of gastric upset, little nausea, may get vomiting, weakness, little dizziness. This may last for few seconds to a minute, followed by a temporary loss of consciousness, which will be lasting for few seconds only. Very rarely person during this phase may get a little involuntary movements. We call it as a seizures type movements. Not very common, but may get, and he will have a fall. Because of a fall he can have an injury, and in a post-syncopal phase person will have a little nausea feeling, confusion which may present for few seconds to a minutes. Person may feel little dizzy, person may feel that he is not feeling well, etc. We have already explained this prodromal phase. So in a prodromal, dizziness, nausea, sweating, pale, visual changes, little muffled hearing, etc. Good number of all these symptoms, plus he might have some of these symptoms also. And during loss of consciousness, it is usually for few seconds, maximum is minutes. He recovers completely, and when he recovers completely, still he might have a little amount of confusion, little nausea, and that will last for few seconds. But if he doesn't lose consciousness and there is only prodromal symptoms, then we call that as a pre-syncope. So in a pre-syncope, in an early stage, any one of these symptoms can be there, like feeling of warmth, loss of color like pallor, perspiration, nausea, blood pressure may fall, there may be tachycardia. Little in a late phase, there will be pupillary dilatation, yawning, cold hands, hypotension, bradycardia, visual disturbances, dizziness, hyperapnea, and person may lose consciousness. Then we call that as a syncope. In a post-syncope, we have already mentioned pallor, nausea, weakness, sweating, little confusion, disorientation, little abnormality as far as concentration is concerned. Blood pressure by and large is usually normal in a post-syncope. and may last for few seconds. And we have already told you that person may develop a symptom because of fall, injury, and person might have a symptom signs because of injury. And some person does not wake up. They are very commonly cardiac syncope, where they develop a very bad cardiac arrhythmias and they can have a sudden cardiac death. Also, you can have a sudden cardiac death in a case of a tight aortic stenosis, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, massive pulmonary embolism, and occasionally, very rare, in case of what we call as a severe obstruction at the level of a mitral valve opening because of left atrial myxoma or a ball valve thrombus. Very uncommon. In case of orthostatic hypotension, we have already told you that it is because of decreased baroreceptor sensitivity, reduced thirst mechanism, or because of multiple drugs. And usually person will have, also it will be common in a diabetic neuropathy, antihypertensive medication, particularly like clonidine, diuretics, etc. Person will have a fall of blood pressure more than 20 millimeter of mercury, that is systolic blood pressure, and diastolic blood pressure more than 10 millimeter of mercury after standing for 30 seconds to 5 minutes. And in this, if it falls immediately, it is called initial orthostatic hypotension, where person recovers within 30 seconds. But if it persists even after 5 minutes, then we call it a delayed hypotension. That is, we call it a mild orthostatic hypotension, where person develops after 10 to 15 minutes because of a blood pooling into periphery. These are the two words utilized. The person who develops immediately within 30 seconds is called initial orthostatic hypotension, and where it persists after few minutes, that is after 5 minutes, and there is a delayed hypotension after 10 to 15 minutes. It is called as a mild orthostatic hypotension. We have already explained this. This is one slide which gives you how you approach to a person with reflex syncope, cardiogenic syncope, and orthostatic. If you combine all these three, this will be accounting for almost 80 to 90% of the group, because reflex is 40 to 50% and cardiogenic and orthostatic is around 20 to 30%. But still, even in this, we do not come to the accurate diagnosis. Hence, we call unknown etiology or idiopathic groups will be accounting for 1/3 of the groups. They may be belonging to any one of these, and we are still unable to pinpoint the etiology. So this is a very good slide, so I am going little bit in detail. In reflex, there are some precipitating factors and they are clearly identifiable, like prolonged standing, blood withdrawal, sight of a blood, or person is deprived of water, is little dehydrated, or person had situation like micturition, defecation, swallowing, etc. So you will have all those precipitate. In cardiogenic, usually it is very frequently after exercise, and by and large in majority of the time there is no precipitating factor. In an orthostatic, it is from change of the posture, from lying down to erect, or from sitting to suddenly in a standing posture. By and large, prodrome will be present in almost all the three, except sometime in cardiogenic prodrome is not seen. Injury is very common in cardiogenic. Injury in a reflex is less common. In reflex syncope and orthostatic syncope, reflex syncope will be more common in a younger individual, cardiogenic will be more common in older individual, and orthostatic is also more common in older individual. Usually in a reflex syncope, the risk factors are minimum or almost negligible. While in cardiogenic, you will have a heart failure, coronary artery disease, strong family history of sudden cardiac death, etc. While in orthostatic syncope, Parkinson's, diabetes, alcohol, drugs, etc. On examination, by and large in a reflex syncope, we don't come across any specific finding. Usually cardiovascular CNS examination is normal. While here on an ECG, echo or X-ray chest or EP study, you will be able to pick up the cardiac arrhythmias. By echo and cardiovascular examination, you will be able to pick up structural heart disease. And here, just by doing a simple test, blood pressure in a supine posture and blood pressure in a erect posture, you will be able to pick up orthostatic hypotension. ECG finding will be normal in reflex as well as orthostatic hypotension, but you will be able to pick up cardiac arrhythmia, either tachyarrhythmia, bradyarrhythmias, or structural heart disease which is producing a ECG changes. That will be picked up by ECG, echo, or by what we call as EP studies. As far as the diagnosis is concerned, in a vasovagal or situational syncope, you might require an additional testing like ambulatory ECG monitor, which will be almost normal. Carotid hypersensitivity can be tested by carotid sinus massage, which will be a very easy way, but should be done under expert supervision. As far as a cardiogenic syncope is concerned, you require a complete cardiovascular examination with echo, ECG, EP study, ambulatory ECG, or you can go for what we call as a external loop recorder or internal loop recorder, etc. In a orthostatic hypotension, mainly you can give a trial of an IV fluid to find out hypovolemia conditions like dehydrations, and you can avoid drugs and look for the improvement in the symptoms, or you can go for a tilt table test, head up tilt table test. So this is further in detail regarding a separate individual clinical features and what you do in reflex syncope, orthostatic hypotension, cardiac syncope. At your leisure time you can go through. I've mentioned almost majority of the thing. This is a very good slide. Almost it explains you everything regarding a reflex, cardiogenic and orthostatic. This is little bit in more detail. If you are interested, you can go through. These are what we call the high risk syncope patients. What you do in a high risk groups. Again, you can go through at leisure time. This is post exertional syncope, where person undergoes an exertion. There will be a form of a vasovagal syncope. This will be usually after cessation of exercise. As soon as the exercise is stopped, venous pool stops getting pumped back to the heart because of decreased peripheral muscle contraction. Heart is still exposed to catecholamines. There is a hypercontraction of LV on an empty cavity. Mechanoreceptor will be stimulated, which will stimulate the vagal nerve, and that will produce bradycardia, and also it will inhibit the heart, what we call as a cardio-inhibitory reflex. Sympathetic system will be inhibited, which will produce peripheral vasodilatation. This is very frequently seen classical in case of a hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy and aortic stenosis. It is very, very important. If a person says that whenever he does an exercise, following an exercise, he gets a syncopal episodes, always try to look for hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy and aortic stenosis. Pseudosyncope, very classical. There are few words which are being utilized. We have already mentioned psychogenic pseudosyncope, we short form we call the PPS. There is also one word called as a non-epileptic syncope, that is psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. or pseudo seizures. Also, there is a word called as a psychogenic pseudosyncope, psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. There is another term utilized is cryptogenic seizures, conversions, non-epileptic attack disorders, paroxysmal non-epileptic events. These are all the different words. The simple two words, psychogenic pseudosyncope and psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. Remember those two. It is more common in children. Eye will be tightly closed or person will be flickering. Prolonged unresponsiveness almost as long as 10 to 30 minutes. There will be irregular, random, continuous movement of extremities. Some person may have arcing of the back like tetanus, we call opisthotonus. It is not a true opisthotonus. There will be gait disturbances while being observed, and it is also called as ataxia, abasia. Almost there is no injury, and you can have a family will often have a video. You can go for a tilt table test, and you can go for a EEG, or you can go for a transcranial Doppler, etc. All will be normal. Normally, the investigation which are done in a syncope are, most important part is a good history, good physical examination, good cardiovascular system examination, because that is the most common cause of syncope, and you will be able to pick up cardiac arrhythmia, structural heart disease, and postural hypotension. So, examination of blood pressure in supine and erect posture after even standing for 5 minutes will be very, very important. Then, if you are suspecting a cardiovascular disorder, ECG, echo, you can go for Holter monitoring, event recorder, internal loop recorder, or insertable loop recorder, or you can go for cardiac imaginations. In some cases, you might require a head-up tilt test, hemodynamic study, and EP studies. These are all required in a cardiovascular disorders. In a vasovagal, usually it is good. It is mainly diagnosed by a good history and good examination, where almost all investigations are normal. It is usually by exclusion and by good history, and sometimes in case of a carotid hypersensitivity, carotid sinus massage will be helpful. Always, whenever you come across a person with a temporary loss of consciousness, get a good history to exactly identify it was a true TLOC, that is transient loss of consciousness. And then you will have to differentiate from a true syncope from the other conditions like traumatic, seizures, non-cardiogenic, and miscellaneous group. Then you try to identify, is person having heart disease, by getting a good history, good cardiovascular system examination and investigation. So these are all the questions which we usually ask to find out it is a syncope or not. I'm not going because it is a very long things. So if loss of consciousness is more than 5 minutes, unlikely to be syncope. Always look for what we call as pseudo syncope groups or mimics groups like drugs, alcohol blackouts, drug intoxications, concussion, narcolepsy, obstructive sleep apnea, hypersomnolence, those groups. If it is less than 5 minutes, also look for seizures, and in that particularly look for tonic-clonic movements, incontinence of bladder and bowel, vomiting, tongue bites, injury, etc. Postictal stage, suspect seizures, and if there is none of these findings, then probably syncope. Very, very simple method. This I have already shown you, but from a good history, try to identify a syncope. Initial evaluation, mainly history, physical examination, ECG, and blood pressure records. From that, you will be able to find out which group he belongs to, and then you can proceed. If there is no syncope, look for epileptic seizures, psychogenic, and mimics. And if there is no temporary loss of consciousness, best is wait and watch. It can be pre-syncope. So do look for that. So whatever we have discussed before, same thing. This is further to identify what are the different groups. So if initial evaluation gives you a straightforward good idea, risk stratification for treatment identification, you go for that. And if diagnosis is unclear, you will have to suspect and then accordingly go for the diagnosis. If you are suspecting structural heart disease, then go for ECG and echo. You can go for, in a stage of cardiac arrhythmia, you can go for what we call as a internal loop recorder or insertable loop recorder, stress testing, EP study, ambulatory ECG, etc. And if there is no structural heart disease, a normal ECG, then you can go for a tilt table test, carotid sinus massage, insertable loop recorder, etc. depending upon what you get clinically. So these are all the different flow charts. At your leisure time you can go through. Simple most we have already explained. This is another very simple, good medical history, clinical examination. ECG is must in almost all. And if you suspect clinically cardiac because of presence of murmur, etc., go for echocardiography. Even in structural heart disease, you can go for echocardiography, X-ray chest, etc. And if there is a documented arrhythmias, clear-cut answer is yes. Now you can go for 24 hours ECG monitoring, ambulatory or exercise testing, EP studies, etc. And if you are not able to come to the diagnosis, you can go for the tilt table test, carotid sinus massage, Valsalva maneuver, and try to elicit, is syncope elicitable and can you make the diagnosis? If everything is no, then go for what we call as a last group, that is syncope mimics. So you can go that way. These are all the different symptomatology which will give you what is more possible. At your leisure time you can go through, otherwise this particular topic will be very long. So I am skipping this particular explanation. Now this is important slide, so I will be going. Any particular person who complains of a syncopal episodes, and if he is having some of these following symptoms, always pay attention and do investigate thoroughly. If it is after exercise, dangerous one, preceded by chest pain, person requires resuscitation, there is a family history of sudden cardiac death, if the person is having already, we call as a sensory neuronal deafness, and person is having a progressive symptoms, more frequent, more prolonged episodes, or it is preceded by palpitation, either bradyarrhythmias or tachyarrhythmias, that is bradycardia or irregular, or person is having hypertension, there is a radiofemoral delay, classical example coarctation of aorta, there is a systolic murmur at aortic valve, there is a murmur because of a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or the heart sounds are feeble, particularly pulsus paradoxus is present in a case of a cardiac tamponade or massive pericardial effusion, or person is having a severe right ventricular heave because of pulmonary hypertension. Very commonly you will come across in a case of acute massive pulmonary embolism. Do pay attention. Also, they are dangerous one if on an ECG you pick up WPW syndrome, myocardial ischemia or myocardial infarction, pulmonary embolism, long QT syndrome. In pulmonary embolism you will have a what we call as S1, Q3, T3 pattern, long QT, Brugada, ARVD, arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia, or person is having catecholamine polymorphic ventricular tachycardia, or clinically you are sure that person is having hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy or is having a tight aortic stenosis, or you are suspecting person is developing dissection of aorta, or person is having clinically stroke or TIA. These are all the conditions you should pay attention and investigate properly. Good history followed by ruling out orthostatic hypotension, EKG, echo, stress study, laboratory parameters particularly CBC, electrolytes, Holter monitoring, ambulatory monitoring, tilt table test particularly for vasovagal syncope, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, dysautonomia will be very helpful to identify tilt table test, cardiology, EPS study, cardiology reference and electrophysiological study will be very helpful, and in some cases insertable loop recorder, or we call as an internal loop recorder. This is one good slide for approach to syncope, that is you get a spell, good history, good physical examination to rule out the cardio neurological symptoms, and you have a good investigation for cardiovascular system and for CNS. ECG is a must in all. Now suppose you have come to the probable diagnosis and you have come to the diagnosis of possible neuroregulatory symptoms, then in that condition head up tilt test, hemodynamic study, blood volume, autonomic testing, carotid sinus massage. While in case of a neurological consultation, EEG, CT scan and other tests. While in a cardiac, you will go for what we call as a ECG, echo, you might go for a cardiac cath, EP studies, external loop recorder, insertable loop recorder, etc. And then you come to the probable diagnosis. So this will rule out three groups: neurocardiogenic, neurological, what we call mimics, and cardiogenic. So try to look for those. Same thing given in a neurological, always go for the head CT scan, carotid Doppler, MRI, skull, brain scan and EEG. While in a cardiac workup, Holter monitor, external loop, internal loop, tilt table test, echo, EPS study. And when both are negative, go for psychological evaluation. As far as endocrine cause, very rare, it can produce orthostatic hypotension, go for endocrine evaluation. In cardiovascular, CT angio or MRI angio, exercise testing, stress testing, ECG study, etc. These are in children. At your leisure time you can go through. This is same thing given. These are the simple most tests which will give you a good answer as far as neurocardiogenic and cardiogenic is concerned. To rule out other groups, laboratory parameters, then echo, CT scan, EEG, CT brain, etc. So these are all the study which will be required to rule out cardio, or what we call as mimics groups. And this will be the simple most test very frequently required for orthostatic hypotension, cardiogenic group and neurocardiogenic groups. This is, you can see this is an insertable loop recorder which will be recording. So carotid sinus massage, tilt table test, electrophysiological study and implantable loop recorder or insertable loop recorder you can go for. These are the things what will happen in a syncope. Because of a fall you will get an injury. This person is most likely to get a syncopal episode. You can have a fractures, you can have a head injuries and you can have a even hematomas. This is in a child with a syncope. What are the common conditions? What you will do in a history, physical examination, and what investigation you will go for in a child. One good slide at your leisure time you can go through. These are the different investigations. What are the indications? And in which condition it is not of much use. At your leisure time you can go through. These are the things which will give you 12 lead ECG. You can get an 12 lead ECG within 10 seconds and you can look at the cardiac arrhythmias, ischemia, any hypertrophy, etc. Holter monitor can be for 2 days, 3 days, etc. Event recorder can be for 7 days. Mobile cardiac outpatient telemetry, that is external loop recorder, can give you an idea for months, and internal loop recorder can be for years. So depending upon what is required you can go for. These are what we call as event recorders, external recorders, or we call as a cardiac outpatient telemetry recorders. These are Holter monitor, which can record for 2 days, 3 days, depending upon how long you use it. These are all external recorders. These are all external. This particular type is replaced almost by a small, you can see these are the two small electrodes. This is a patch which you can put and it will record for few days to a month. And these are the loop recorders, and then you can decode them. These are implantable loop recorders, we can record for years. This is mobile cardiac outpatient telemetry, which is very helpful. When the person gets symptoms, he just press button, ECG is recorded, which will be sent to a center where an expert will visualize and he'll report that particular to a doctor in charge, and doctor will give an advice, that is physician will give an advice straightforward to a patient, and that is how this works. And this is an implantable loop recorder which you can record and you can receive a message directly. So during a fainting episodes, patient uses an activator and physician will receive that input, and physician will analyze and will give an advice to a patient directly. And you can see this is inside, that is implantable loop recorder. This is a difference between syncope and seizure. This will be little longer, still we will have to, because we'll be discussing in detail in a chapter of seizure, but still in a little brief. Syncope is more common, seizure is less common. Syncope will be more common with related to the posture, while seizure will never be in relation to the posture. This will be at any time of the day. This is more common during night. Nocturnal seizures are more common. Here emotion, injury, pain, crowd, heat, exercise, fear, situational, dehydration, etc. are the precipitating factor. While here alcohol withdrawal, sleep loss, drug, what we call is a loud sound, bright lights, etc. can be precipitating factors. Here before the person gets syncope, there can be a pallor. During seizures, person can be cyanosed. Diaphoresis will be very common. Aura is for a longer period, while in a seizure it is for a shorter period. Convulsions is absolutely rare in case of a syncope, while it is very common. You will have a tonic phase, clonic phase, etc. In syncope you might have a minor twitchings only, while here it is a rhythmic, that is tonic followed by a clonic. Injury is not very common with syncope, particularly neurocardiogenic syncope and orthostatic hypotension. It may be there in a case of a cardiogenic where person can get sudden fall. It is quite common in case of seizures. Incontinence is very common in seizures. Tongue bite is common in seizures. Postictal confusion is more common in seizures. Postictal headache is also more common in seizures. Neurological signs may be common in seizures. We call Todd's palsy, where person recovers in a case of what we call as a idiopathic or we call as epilepsy. Cardiovascular signs, that is murmur, tachyarrhythmia, bradyarrhythmia, postural hypotension will be very common in a cardiogenic syncope or we call as a cardiac syncope and orthostatic syncope. While in case of a convulsive disorders, CVS examination is absolutely normal. EEG will be abnormal in case of a seizures and you will get those abnormal electrical potentials, while it will be absolutely normal in case of syncope. But you can have a generalized slowing of a electrical potential during the episodes. While here in seizures, even after the episode, you can see an abnormal electrical activity. This is again the same given in little further detail. At your leisure time, this can be asked in your oral, can be asked as a short note, and will be very useful to differentiate syncope from seizures. At your leisure time, aura, dizziness, color, jerking movement, convulsions, then eye, deviation of the eyes, then tongue bite, urinary incontinence, duration, disorientation, CPK. CPK will be markedly elevated in case of a seizures rather than in case of a syncope. So just go through at your leisure time. This is again a difference. I'm skipping over. There are a lot of slides. As far as the treatment is concerned, very few things are very clear. You will have a clear-cut treatment available in case of a cardiac disorders. So if you diagnose a arrhythmia, specific treatments are available. In structural heart disease, you will have to have a surgical intervention or a drug therapy. In case of cardiac arrhythmia, you can go for a drugs or you can go for a ablation therapy, etc. And in case of a ARVD or in case of what we call as channelopathy, particularly a person who has got certain syndromes which are there common because of channelopathy, you can go for a ICD, that is implantable cardio defibrillators. So you can go for a implantable cardiac devices, particularly in case of a long QT, short QT, in case of a ARVD, etc. But in case of a orthostatic hypotension, you can stop the medicines which is responsible. If a dehydrated person is there, you can give a IV fluid challenge. If a person is diabetic, rigid control of diabetes, etc. can be done. We have already discussed regarding orthostatic hypotension in detail. You can go through that particular slides and video lecture. So that will be there as far as a orthostatic hypotension. And if there is an unexplained etiology, particularly you are not able to identify on a ECG, you do investigate properly, try to find out a group where there is a coronary artery disease, dilated cardiomyopathy, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, arrhythmogenic right ventricular syndromes group, or we also call as ARVD, arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia, long QT, short QT, Brugada syndromes, etc., where you might require a implantable or we require a implantable cardioverter defibrillator, or we also call as a implantable cardiac device, that is short form we call as ICD. So that will be absolutely necessary. So these are all the things which you can go through in short regarding a treatment part. This is a head up tilt table test. how it works. It will help you to identify a vasovagal group more frequently as compared to other. So it is very useful in a vasovagal syncope. So it is useful in a syncope of unknown etiology, more useful in suspected vasovagal. Also, it will be useful in SA node disorders, AV node dysfunctions, or we call sick sinus syndromes. Also, it will help you to differentiate pseudo seizures, psychogenic syncopes, etc. So try to identify that. Also, there is one group called as a paroxysmal atrial fibrillation with syncope. So whenever you do a head tilt up test, and if a person develops paroxysmal atrial fibrillation, that at that time, if he develops a syncope, it is that paroxysmal atrial fibrillation leading to a syncope. These are all the few conditions which you can pick up by head up tilt table test. So it will be helpful to you in all these conditions, even to identify a postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, dysautonomia, orthostatic hypotension, then TIAs also. Also, it will help you to rule out chronic fatigue syndrome. Also, in case of a sudden infant death syndromes also, it will help you out. So these are all the emergency indications where you will go for a tilt table test. So these are all the indication of a tilt table test. Few we have already mentioned. If you are interested, you can go through in detail. Now there is a one peculiar thing, response, what you get. It is called type 1 mixed response, type 2 cardioinhibitory without asystole, type 2B is cardioinhibitory with asystole, and vasodepressor response. Depending upon those response, it is put into these four groups, and clinical use you can suspect what it is more likely. So this is a response what you can come across when you do a tilt table test. I'm not going into detail. Carotid hypersensitive, you can go for carotid sinus massage. You can have an abnormal response in the form of vasodepressor response or cardioinhibitory response where you get a pauses for more than 3 seconds, sinus pauses or AV blocks, and vasodepressor response in the form of a fall of systolic blood pressure more than 50 millimeter of mercury. Hence, this should be done in presence of full-blown ICU and by an expert. And in some, you get a both response together, and that is what is called as a carotid sinus hypersensitivity. If you get any one of these three, either by vasodepressor, cardioinhibitory, or both together, that will be diagnosis of hypersensitive carotid sinus. In general management, step 1, first is position. Head low, elevate the foot, very very important. So just supine posture with leg slightly elevated, very very important. This will be the position. Elevate the foot little bit. By and large, in a person with a hypotension will be benefited. Second thing, what is happening is venous return is increased, so blood pressure will be elevated, there will be more blood supply to the brain. Step 2, always look for circulation first, then airway, and then breathing, and maintain that. In case of you want to identify pseudosyncope, you can go for ammonia inhalation if you want to differentiate that. And then we go for what we call as a definite care. Go for investigation, good history, diagnosis, and then treatment. So assess consciousness, call for assistance, position, look for circulation, airway, breathing, and then If person is hypoxic, oxygen, monitor vital signs, diagnosis and definitive treatment. Go for that. And if there is a delay in the recovery, you must go for all the detailed investigations. So cardiac arrhythmias, pacemaker, drugs, radiofrequency ablation, ICD, intracardiac device, or it is called implantable cardioverter defibrillator, implantable cardioverter defibrillator, and CRT is in a case of a failure, cardiac resynchronization therapy. So any one of these may be needed in a person. Vasovagal, usually head low, tilt training, diet, fluid, salt, supportive treatments, particularly you can have a compressive belts, drug therapy, and in some patient you might require even a pacing. This is neurally mediated, lifestyle changes, drugs. At your leisure time you can go through. In complications, most common is because of fall, person get an injury. And in a case of a cardiovascular, particularly long QT, short QT, Brugada, ARVD, there is a very high chance of sudden cardiac death because they can end up with sudden cardiac death. Also, there is a chance in case of aortic stenosis, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, massive pulmonary embolism, and also sometimes in case of cardiac tamponade. So these are the key takeaway points. Remember, very common, syncope is very common. The most common cause is vasovagal, second is cardiogenic, third is orthostatic. Try to rule out those. After ruling out those, you can suspect syncope mimics, which can be very close to seizures. So you must differentiate syncope from seizures and also from pseudo seizures. Vasovagal syncope is the most common, almost accounting for 50%. Cardiogenic syncope is dangerous one because it can end up into sudden cardiac death. So good clinical examination followed by a good cardiovascular investigation like ECG, echo, Holter monitoring, etc. can help you to identify the cause and give a proper treatment. So I end my lecture here. I feel this lecture will be very helpful to you because you will come across in your everyday practice good number of time you will see a patient of seizure. You will have to differentiate it from a syncope, pseudo seizures, etc. And you will also see good number of time vasovagal, or we call neurocardiogenic or reflex syncope. You will have to differentiate that from cardiogenic because cardiogenic has got a high mortality while vasovagal has got very low mortality. Very rarely because of an injury they can develop a morbidity rather than mortality. So always look for that. So at the end of this lecture, I thank you all for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable and I appreciate this for spending some of the time with me. If you feel this lecture is helpful to you, please press button like. You can subscribe, and if you feel this will be helpful to your friends and your group, you can share in your groups as well as to your friends. See you in the next lecture.